Heart tightened, tension surging like a violent wave. How had they fallen into this state? I had imagined many scenarios for their life after leaving the dealership, but never this tragic one. Even though I had told myself I was no longer bound to them, that the past wounds had forced me to cut all ties, seeing this scene made it impossible to walk away. A powerful mix of pity and conflict rose within me, choking my throat and stinging my eyes. Part of me wanted to turn away, remembering the harsh criticisms, the times I was undervalued and betrayed. But the other part, the son in me, couldn't bear seeing my parents at rock bottom like this. Tension spread through my body as I wondered if intervening would be a mistake, or if this was a chance to heal the cracks without losing myself. As I drew nearer, my parents suddenly recognized me. They immediately stood up awkwardly, heads bowed in shame, and hurriedly tried to leave as if to escape my gaze. My father staggered to his feet, leaning against the wall, his voice hoarse. "Is that you, Ben?" My mother covered her mouth, eyes red-rimmed, and they began turning away, walking quickly without another word, as if my presence was an unbearable humiliation. I could clearly see the shame in their every gesture. These once proud people who had commanded an entire dealership now wanting to flee from their own son. I called out to them, saying I wanted to talk, and after a moment's hesitation, they agreed to follow me in silence. "Mom, Dad, wait. I want to talk to you." My voice rang out, firm yet gentle, cutting through the heavy silence. They stopped, exchanged conflicted glances, and after a brief pause, nodded without speaking, following me quietly. We walked along the sidewalk, shoes crunching on the wet pavement, the air between us so thick it could be cut. The tension inside me didn't subside, for I didn't know where this conversation would lead, but I knew I couldn't turn away now. I took them to a nearby roadside diner, ordered simple but hearty dishes, and quietly watched as they ate ravenously like people who hadn't had a proper meal in days. The small, cozy diner with its warm yellow lights and inviting food aromas was a place I often stopped after work. I chose a corner table and ordered hot soup, toasted bread, roasted chicken, and fresh salad, simple but nourishing meals. My parents sat down, hands trembling as they held spoons and forks and began eating greedily, as if this were their first real meal after days of hunger. My father slurped the soup hurriedly. My mother bit into the bread without chewing properly. I sat silently watching, my heart aching with pity. The sight choked me as I realized they had truly hit rock bottom with none of their former pride remaining. These people who had once harshly criticized me, who had disowned me, were now just two frail individuals dependent on others' kindness. Once they calmed down after the meal, I asked what had happened since leaving the dealership. "Mom, Dad, tell me. What happened after you left the dealership?" I asked gently but firmly, trying to keep the atmosphere from becoming too tense. My parents began to speak, their voices trembling and halting, explaining that just a few months earlier, Declan had come to them with a quick profit investment project, promising it would turn things around and help them reclaim what they had lost. My father sighed heavily. "Declan came to our house talking about a real estate investment on the outskirts. He promised that with our capital, we'd double our money and could buy back the dealership or start something new." My mother continued, eyes red-rimmed and voice shaking. "He's our eldest son. We trusted him. He said this was our last chance to turn everything around, to regain what we lost. Because of you." Those words caused a slow, dull ache in my chest. But I said nothing, just sat silently and listened to the end. They explained that trusting their older brother, they had poured in their remaining savings and even mortgaged their only house to contribute capital. "We put in everything we had left, savings from years of work, and borrowed more by mortgaging the house," my father said, his voice full of regret. "We thought it was the way to get back on our feet, to avoid living in shame." Not long after, Declan disappeared with all the money, leaving them with enormous debt. The bank quickly foreclosed on the house, forcing them to leave and become truly homeless. My mother sobbed softly. "He vanished after just a few weeks without a word. The bank came for the house. We had nowhere to go and ended up on the streets. My father bowed his head. Since then, we've lived like this, begging, sleeping outdoors. We have nothing left. Looking at my parents sitting before me, I went through an intense internal struggle between painful memories and filial duty. My heart raced, tension surging like a storm. The hurtful memories flooded back. The times I was undervalued, the insults when I left, the favoritism toward Declan. I wondered why I should help when they had pushed me aside. But filial duty, the bond of blood, made it impossible to remain indifferent. They were my parents, after all. The tension made my hands cold, my mind spinning with questions. Help them and risk being taken advantage of again? Or was this a chance to heal? In the end, I decided to extend a helping hand, but with a clear resolve that the help would come with strict conditions and boundaries to ensure the old tragedies would never repeat. "I'll help you," I said firmly. "I'll take you to my home temporarily and help you get stable. But there are conditions. No more risky investments, no interfering in my work, and you'll gradually find ways to become self-reliant." They nodded, eyes flickering with a mix of hope and shame. The tension eased, replaced by peace. This was my choice, and I would hold firm to the boundaries to protect myself. I watched my parents sitting across from me in the roadside diner, the empty soup bowls and a few crumbs of bread scattered on the table in front of them. Their faces no longer carried the arrogance or reproach from our previous arguments. Only exhaustion and a silent, unnamed gratitude. My father wiped his mouth with his threadbare sleeve, cleared his throat, and spoke in a hoarse, low voice. "Thank you, son. We'll try. At least we won't disappoint you any further." My mother nodded, her eyes red-rimmed but no longer crying, as if she were trying to preserve the last shred of dignity for herself. I stood up to pay the bill, then led them to the car, opening the back door for them to get in. The drive back to my apartment suddenly felt longer than usual. The patter of rain on the windshield blended with the heavy silence inside the car, so thick it was almost tangible. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw my parents sitting close together, hands clasped tightly as if clinging to something fragile. A wave of tension rose in me. Was this decision the right one? Would they truly respect the boundaries I had set, or would everything fall back into the old cycle of hurt? I exhaled softly, pushing those thoughts aside and focusing on driving slowly through Portland's wet streets, as if letting go of the wheel for even a second would cause everything to slip out of control. I brought my parents to live temporarily in my small home, seeing it as a short-term solution while I considered a longer-term plan. My apartment wasn't spacious, just one bedroom, a living room that doubled as a kitchen, and a small balcony overlooking the street. But it was enough for 3 people. I turned the sofa into a temporary bed, pulled clean blankets and pillows from the closet, and showed them how to use the simple gas stove. "You can sleep here for now. Tomorrow I'll buy whatever else you need," I said, my voice gentle but firm. They nodded without demanding anything, quietly removing their shoes and lying down. I went into my room, closed the door, and lay awake for a long while. The tension lingered like an underground current. This was the first time I had let them into my private world, and I wondered if their presence would disrupt the peace I had built. But I knew it was only temporary. I needed time to think about a permanent solution, perhaps finding them a separate place or helping them find work to become self-sufficient. The first days passed quietly, without conflict or forced interactions, just 3 people coexisting in an unfamiliar space. In the mornings, I got up to brew coffee, leaving 3 cups on the kitchen table, then headed to work without much conversation. My parents woke later, ate breakfast with the bread and fruit I had bought, and spent most of their time sitting in the living room, gazing out the balcony or watching TV at low volume. There were no long conversations, no barrage of questions about my work, no recriminations about the past. The apartment's atmosphere became strangely peaceful, as if we were all learning to live together without touching old wounds. I came home late, often eating dinner alone at the dealership, then returning just to sleep. The initial tension gradually gave way to familiarity. But I remained vigilant, always reminding myself of the boundaries I had set. Wesley became quiet and withdrawn, speaking little, spending much of his time alone or doing simple chores as if to remind himself he was no longer in a position to give orders. My father, the man who once shouted at staff and commanded the family, now sat for hours by the window watching the rain, or voluntarily washed dishes after meals without being asked. He said little, only nodding when I asked about his health, and sometimes made himself a cup of tea, sitting in a corner lost in thought about past mistakes. I observed him from a distance, noticing the change, no longer authoritative but an aging man learning humility. The tension inside me lingered, wondering if this quietness was genuine or just temporary. Nancy no longer carried her former haughty air. She took the initiative to clean, cook, and always acted cautiously, as if afraid of bothering her son. My mother, who once obsessed over the dealership's image and harshly criticized me, now rose early to sweep the floors, wipe the kitchen counters, and prepare simple meals like vegetable soup or sandwiches. She did everything quietly, always asking my permission before using anything. That cautious attitude softened my heart, but it also reminded me of old wounds. She no longer had the superior demeanor or sarcastic remarks, just a weary woman trying to atone through actions. Each dinner passed in silence, the shame evident in my parents' eyes as they sat across from me. We gathered around the small table eating what my mother had cooked, but no one spoke much. Their gazes avoided mine, filled with embarrassment for falling into this situation, for what they had done to me. I ate slowly, observing them, tension creeping in. Would they speak up? Or would this silence last forever? I watched it all calmly, occasionally asking brief questions about their health or daily needs without blame or consolation. I didn't want to corner them, so I kept it simple. "How are you feeling today, Mom and Dad? Is the food okay?" They answered briefly, and I didn't probe deeper. I didn't reproach them about the past or offer empty comforts. I believed time would heal, not words. The tension inside me gradually shifted to waiting to see if their change was real. One evening, after a simple meal, the three of us sat in the living room. Outside the window, rain continued to fall steadily, each drop prolonging the silence in the room. The TV was on low, playing the familiar news, but no one was really watching. The atmosphere was so heavy I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. We sat like that for a long time until my father cleared his throat. "We want to talk to you," he said, his voice hoarse and lower than usual. I reached for the remote and turned off the TV, sitting up straighter. My heart beat a little faster, a familiar feeling, both tense and wary. Perhaps this was the moment. My father looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed without the usual hardness. "We were blind," he said slowly, as if each word was painfully difficult to utter. "Because of power, pride, and favoritism toward Declan. We thought we were protecting the family, but in the end, we lost everything." He paused, taking a deep breath. "We lost the dealership. We lost our son. And we lost ourselves." My mother clasped her hands tightly, then continued, her voice trembling. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "I was wrong. Wrong for always favoring your brother, for undervaluing you and taking your efforts for granted. I let greed and arrogance blind me, failing to see how much you were hurting." The room fell silent again. There were no excuses, no blaming circumstances or others, just raw acknowledgement without evasion. My father spoke again, his voice deeper. "We're not asking for your forgiveness. We know some things can't be undone. We just wanted to say it all to lighten our hearts and to let you know we accept responsibility for our mistakes." My mother nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. "We were wrong, and we have to live with that," she whispered. Hearing those words, I felt the tension inside me ease. This wasn't pleading or the familiar emotional manipulation. For the first time, they spoke without demanding anything in return. My father looked up, his gaze both ashamed and resolute. "We promised to change," he said, Not to get the dealership back, not to regain power or our old positions, just to live decently and not become a burden to you ever again. My mother added softly but clearly, "I'll look for work. Even something small is fine. We don't want to depend on you forever." Those words surprised me. The tension didn't vanish, but for the first time it turned into a faint glimmer of hope. Fragile, but real. I listened in silence without interrupting or arguing. When they finished, I simply nodded lightly. I understand, but I need time. To see it through actions, not promises. I didn't promise forgiveness or step forward to hug them. I knew words meant little now. Only time and the actions that followed could answer everything. The tension remained, but I accepted the weight. This time I wasn't rushing. In the days that followed, I gradually noticed real change in how my parents behaved, how they voluntarily maintained distance and respected the boundaries I had set. My father started looking for work, a manual labor job at a nearby garage without complaint. My mother helped with housework but didn't interfere with my schedule. They kept their distance, respecting my privacy. No questions about the dealership, no comments on my work. That change surprised me. Tension gave way to growing trust. I also gradually let go of old resentments, giving the family a chance to start over, but with clear limits to avoid repeating past cycles of hurt. I began talking more, sharing small stories about work, and they listened without judgment. I released the grudges but maintained boundaries. We're starting over, but if the mistakes repeat, I'll stop. They understood. My parents understood and accepted it, demanding nothing more, just quietly trying to live better each day. They didn't ask for more, just tried. My father went to work, my mother learned new recipes. Life gradually warmed. My life entered a new phase, stable, independent, and more peaceful, no longer dominated by the past. The dealership ran well, personal life balanced, with my parents as a new part but healthy. One day, while visiting the dealership to check operations and seeing everything running smoothly, I suddenly recalled the entire journey and drew profound lessons from it. That morning, I arrived to find staff busy and customers plentiful. I remembered the path, from the old man Clarence to the decision to leave, the acquisition, then helping my parents. Looking back at everything that had happened, I understood that power or money never truly determines a person's worth. Numbers can change, positions can be lost, but how one treats others in moments when no one forces kindness, that is what lasts longest. I had witnessed contempt when people thought they were superior and change when everything collapsed. Those moments taught me true value. I also learned that family is only a true refuge when built on respect, fairness, and responsibility. Blood ties don't grant anyone the right to impose, favor, or hurt others and call it love. When love comes with power and distorted expectations, it easily becomes a burden rather than support. Only when each person acknowledges their mistakes and accepts responsibility can a family have a chance to heal. And if there's one thing I want to remind myself, and anyone in a similar situation, it's to set clear boundaries. Be compassionate enough to give others a chance to make amends, but wise enough not to lose yourself again. Forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the way things were, and love doesn't mean enduring suffering. Sometimes the bravest choice is to move forward slowly, hold firm to principles, and continue living the life you choose for yourself.